My bike has a fuel economy of 2.66 liters to 100 kilometers, but what does that even mean in terms of miles per gallon? Or on TV I saw Ford is advertising a vehicle with a fuel economy of 40 miles per gallon or so. What does that mean in terms of liters per 100 kilometers for all the other metric countries? In this video I'll show you how to convert these fuel economy figures from liters per 100 kilometers to miles per gallon and back. Let's get started with my bike here. It's got 2.66 liters over 100 kilometers. And I'm going to treat it like we do equivalent fractions. Remember equivalent fractions from middle school? For example, we had 1/2, where 1/2 is the same, not the same. It's equivalent to 2/4, where 1/2 pizza is it's my wooden pizza here, is just about the same as 2/4 pizzas, but they are not entirely the same, but at least they are equivalent. So those are equivalent fractions, remember, from middle school, and that's how it's gonna be going. We're gonna go from liters and kilometers, and we're gonna end up with miles and gallons. Here the numerator has volume and the denominator has distance. Here the numerator has distance. Don't worry about it, we'll just flip it at a certain point. So we're gonna go step by step so the calculations make sense, and after that there is a way to simplify it if you want to memorize just one conversion factor, and it's gonna be really straightforward to use that conversion factor, but I'll show you step by step first. So to do it, we have to convert the 100 kilometers into some miles, and we know that 1 mile, land mile, not nautical mile, 1 mile is 1.6 kilometers. There's more digits there too. It's actually 1.609344, but don't worry about the rest of the digits. For this calculation is going to be close enough. Then how many miles is 100 kilometers? To solve this ratio and proportion, you've got these two amounts here. We have to divide the 100 by the 1.6, and when we do so, we get, what do we get? 100 divided by 1.6, 62.5. We're gonna get 62.5 miles. So that's the denominator. 2.6 liters needs to be converted into gallons, and we got an option here. Should it be imperial gallons or should it be US gallons? We're gonna do both, and then you can just pick and use, because some countries use US gallons and a bunch of Commonwealth countries use British gallons or imperial gallons. So to do that, I'm going to write another ratio and proportion. 1 US gallon is 3.78 liters. It's got more digits to it, but you can look it up and don't worry about it for this calculation. So if 1 gallon has so many liters, then 2.66 liters has how many gallons? To do that, again, we're going to have a division to go there. The 2.66 needs to be divided by the 3.78, and when we do that, we're getting a 0.7 gallon US amount. So if a vehicle is using 2.66 liters of gas over 100 kilometer distance, it's the same thing as saying it's using 0.7 US gallons over a distance of 62.5 miles. 0.7 over 62.5. And if it's using 0.7 over 62.5, how many miles is it making out of just 1 gallon? Sorry guys, this one's upside down, because miles per gallon is 62.5 miles is traveled out of 0.7 gallons. And this is what I said, that we're going to flip it at one point. Here it is. So now the 62.5 is divided by the 0.7, and then we get a figure of 89.2 miles per US gallons. That's my fuel economy. If my bike is doing 2.66 liters on 100 kilometers, that's the same as 89.2 miles for US gallon. If it's not US gallons, if it's Imperial gallons, then this figure here is not 3.78. Instead, 1 Imperial gallon is 4.54 liters. 4.54 liters. So therefore, this amount here will be different. 2.66 is here, and we still do the division the same way. It's just going to be a different number. 2.66 is to be divided by 4.54. 2.66 and by 4.54. So now it's 0.58. That's Imperial or British gallon. And if it's so, then my fuel economy is going to be 62.5 miles traveled out of only 0.58 gallons, because the British gallon is bigger. And if such is the case, then it's 62.5 divided by 0.58. Then my fuel economy is 107.7 miles per Imperial gallon, because these are different. Okay, so those are two fuel economy figures depending on what kind of gallons you're using. And if you're using nautical miles, of course, then this figure here is going to be different, because that 1.6, because 1 nautical mile is not 1.6 kilometers, it's 1.9 and something like that. So that's how to convert from liters per 100 kilometer to miles a gallon. But we can simplify all this calculation quite a bit by looking at how did we get arithmetically this 89.2 amount. What is always the same in this 89.2 figure is, okay, this one's a variable. Okay, so this one changes. Variable that changes, but that 1.6 kilometer doesn't change given land miles. The 100 kilometer amount doesn't change, and the 3.78 doesn't change either. Those are fixed amounts given US gallons. So given US gallon and land miles, that number, and that number are the same, and we can roll up these three numbers to create just one number out of them, and we only need to supply the variable, and we can simplify the calculations a bit. Let's see, what did we do with the 100 and the 1.6? There was a division there, so I'm gonna write it up. 100 was divided by the 1.6. That was one operation, and out of that, by the way, we got 62.5, and then we had another division there. The 2.66 was divided by the 3.78, and after this division we got 0.7, and then the 62.5 was divided by the 0.7. There it is. And how did we get the 62.5 again? We divided the 100 by the 1.6. And how did we get the 0.7 again? We divided by the 2.66 by the 3.78. So what we have here is a fraction division, which is the same format as A over B divided by C over D. And how do we solve a fraction like this? In classic math, A over B is times by the reciprocal of the other fraction, D over C, which is then A times D over B times C. And to do this, therefore, we can do this one doesn't change, that one doesn't change, and that one doesn't change, and this is the variable here. And to roll up these three numbers correctly, this is how it looks like. The 100 has to be multiplied, that's multiplication, by the 3.78. Okay, now that's multiplication. And gets divided by the 1.6. And then it gets divided by the 2.66, and that's the only variable here, because that's standard, that's standard, that's standard. And if that is the case, 3.78 times 100 is 378, divided by 1.6 equals 236 and a quarter. 236 and a quarter divided by the number of liters of gas, and you're gonna get miles per US gallons out of it. If you just go 236 and a quarter divided by 2.66, you're gonna get 88.8 out of it right away. Now I know that it's not exactly 89.2, but I was shaving off some of the decimal digits and made some simplification here. That's why it's not exactly the same, but they are comparable and they're close enough for a quick calculation. And for British gallons, let me just zoom out a little bit so you can see better. And for British gallons, this number here was different. Where's my pencil? Found it. That number was different. It's gonna be, and therefore this conversion factor is gonna be different. For British gallons, that number is 4.54. So you're going 100 times 4.54 divided by 1.6 divided by the number of liters of gas, and your new conversion factor is 454, because that's 4.54 times 100 divided by 1.6, and that equals to 283.75 equals your miles per imperial gallons. Okay, so those are the two numbers that you need for a quick US gallon or imperial gallon conversion. Because if I go 283.75 283.75 divided by 2.66, I'm gonna get back my almost 107 miles to the gallon that I got out of the first calculation. So these two numbers are really handy, and it's just one operation to get your miles per gallon out of it. Similarly, the converting miles per gallon to liters per 100 kilometers is likewise straightforward. Say, let's go with 39 miles per 1 gallon. That was in the commercial, and that's US gallons. Okay, we're gonna need to convert it to liters per 100 kilometers, and this is gonna be again an equivalent fraction situation. 39 miles needs to be made into kilometers, and every one mile is 1.6 kilometers, so 39 miles will be 39 times as many kilometers. 39 times 1.6 equals 62.4 kilometers, and this 62.4 has nothing to do with the previous 62.5 from the previous page. Okay, it's just a sheer coincidence that they look alike but they have nothing in common. Okay, and 1 gallon is US gallon is just 3.78 liters. So to go 39 miles using 1 gallon is the same as traveling 62.4 kilometers using 3.78 liters. Okay, we're making progress here. And we are looking for an equivalent fraction. We're going to be traveling 100 kilometers, and we want to know how many liters this travel is going to use. Here is the ratio and proportion. To solve it for x, we have to multiply this number with this number and then divide by the third number. So 3.78 times 100 divided by 62.4, and that gives us, and let's go 37, actually that's 378 divided by 62.4, that gives us 6.05 liters for 100 kilometers of travel. Okay, now again we have in this calculation 3 numbers that do not change and 1 variable. The numbers that don't change is that one, and the 100 kilo. Sorry, I already checked that once. Let me just, my bad. And that one, the 1.6. And we can make out of the same 3 numbers 1 conversion factor that we can use. Now, what do we do here? The 3.78 was multiplied by the 100, and that 62.4 number that was created by the variable, the 39 miles per gallon. So I'm just going to write V for variable. It was multiplied by the 1.6 because there is 1.6 kilometers in a mile, and that fraction is the same as 3.78 times 100 divided by 1.6 divided by the variable. And when we do a subtotal for this bracket up top, what do we get? 278 divided by 1.6, again it's 236.25 divided by the variable, the 39. And if I divide that by 39, we again get back the 6.05 amount that we calculated in the first place. So just like in the previous calculation, where the conversion factor was 236.25, and we divided it by the number of liters to get miles per gallon. Here we have 236.25, the same figure. We divide it by the number of gallons, and we're going to get liters per 100 kilometer out of it. So this number is really useful when you're working with US gallons. And when you're working with imperial gallons, this number changes to 4.54. That's all that takes place, that's all the changes. Here's the number of gallons and times by 1.6, which is the same as the same fraction. 4.54 times 100 divided by 1.6 divided by the number of gallons again, and that's 454 divided by 1.6, 283.75. That gets to be divided again by the number of gallons, same as on the previous page, 283.75. And these conversion factors are fairly straightforward to use, because to get and to summarize what we did here, to get miles per gallon out of liters per 100 kilometers, and this is what kind of gallon? US gallons. What we need to do to get miles per gallon, US gallon, is 236.25 needs to be divided by the number of liters, and you're gonna get gallons out of it, US. Or to get liters per 100 kilometers out of miles per US gallons, what one needs to do is 236.25 gets divided by the number of miles per gallon, and you're gonna get liters out of it. So I hope that makes sense, that there's only one number to memorize for the US gallon calculations, and you either have the liters here and you get gallons out of it, or you have the gallons here and you get liters out of it. And the same works with imperial gallons as well. To get miles per imperial gallons from liters per 100 kilometers, you get this conversion amount there from the corner. 283.75 gets divided by the number of liters, and you're gonna get gallons out of it, British. And it's gonna go Great Britain. And likewise, to get liters per 100 kilometers out of miles per imperial gallons, you need to do 283.75 divided by the number of gallons, and you're gonna get liters out of it. There, the two calculations are similar and they are comparable, and those are the super fast formulas to work out your number of gallons out of liters, or a number of liters per 100 kilometers out of gallons. And you only need to memorize either that number or that number, and then it's one division to go. So that's how we convert fuel economy numbers.